Some of you may already be familiar with this classic experiment, but let's go through it and also explain the science behind it. So in this experiment, we're going to be making a slime. We're going to be using glue, borax, which you find in the laundry aisle, cups, and then some sort of toothpick or stir stick. Really anything will work. Your finger works just great too. So one of the things that I do when I do this experiment is I have students try different varieties of glue. So you can actually buy clear colorless glue. It looks completely you can see straight through it. This is traditional white glue that I'm going to be using today. There's also a clear glue that's got a blue color to it. And then there's glitter glue. There's all kinds of school glues. So you actually do get different slimes based on the type of glue you use. And when I go out to the schools and do this experiment, we actually try several different varieties so we can compare. The borax, if you're not familiar with it, comes from the laundry aisle. Okay, there's nothing special there. And then cups are, of course, of your choosing. So you'll see different variations on this experiment around the internet, but this is the version that I do when I go out to the schools with the students. So let's first explain the science behind what we're going to be doing. So a polymer is a chain made out of repeating units, which we call monomers. Okay, so this whole thing is called a polymer, poly like many, right? And each one of them is called a monomer, mon like one, right? So when you repeat monomers over and over and over and over and over, you get what's called a polymer. So the glue that we're going to be using, the glue is made out of polymers. So if you could think of them as like spaghetti noodles, right? Each one of these squiggly little lines represents a polymer. So they're able to slide past, back and forth each other, and that's what gives glue the texture that we're all familiar with. Now, when we add borax, specifically the borate ions, what we're dealing with here, we're going to form links in between those polymers. And that locks them in place a little bit because now they're not free to just slide in whatever direction they want. And so the neat thing about this experiment is that the ratio of glue to borax determines the texture of slime that you're going to get. And so one of the other ways you can extend this experiment is you can have your students create different concentrations of borax solution first, and then add the same amount of glue to it, so you're varying the amount of cross links that you have. Or you could use the same concentration borax and then vary the amount of glue you add. So you can play with each one of those variables. And so that was what makes this an experiment that's easy to extend into a lot of different areas. So what I've done here is I just have a little bit of water. Now the way I always do this experiment is I dissolve the borax in the water first and then add the glue. But I've seen it done the other way where you add the solution to the glue. I personally don't think it makes that much of a difference. So this one I'm going to dissolve about half a tablespoon in because I don't have very much water. Because you'll see all that borax is not even going to dissolve in this much water. So basically we want to make this scenario, to put it into chemistry terms, we want to make it so that the glue is the limiting reactant. That's the way I'm setting this experiment up. Now if you were doing it the other way, right, you could make this the dilute. You could vary the concentrations here, okay? You could vary your concentrations here. But here I'm making both of these really concentrated so that the glue is the limiting reactant. So let's add the glue. We'll add just a little bit. And then in this one we're going to add a lot. And so you can already see as I'm adding the glue, it's just already starting to clump up and become more solidified. So this one's going to have lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of glue. This one's just got a tiny little bit. So we fish out our product. I mean, it is tacky and slimy and squishy, and it's not going anywhere, right? That is just your traditional slime. Very fun thing to play with. Turn into a bouncy ball. This other one, fish it out. I just go in after it, right? Get your hands dirty. It actually has a slightly different consistency to it. I know it's hard to convey that in a video, but it does actually have, you can tell by looking at it, it has a slightly different texture. And so you can vary the ratio. You can play with your ratio to get different ones. The nice thing about having a concentrated solution like this is because you've got so much in there, you can actually, I'll set that aside, keep adding glue to it until you use up all the borax. And because you've got so much borax in there, that will take a while. It's not going to be something that will be all consumed after 1 or 2 trials. You can keep using this for a long time if you make it concentrated like that. So here's a third trial. And it came out a little bit different from the first one. So this is a nice qualitative experiment that you can do with your students to introduce them to the idea of variables, the idea that changing one variable causes an effect that is different. Another nice thing about this is if you let it dry, you can compare how it feels before it dried versus after it dried, and look at the changes that occur once all the water's gone. So this is a nice experiment to introduce your students to variables, and it's a nice experiment just because it's easy and it uses home items. Just make sure that you wash your hands really well after you use the borax. Have fun with the slime.